I will say Phoenix Lord sounds cool as shit. If we had Phoenix Lords in a human society, I would also want to be one of those. What do you mean? Hi guys, let's continue the explanation of every single Warhammer faction. So we stopped at the Craft World Eldar, which are the Eldar that are basically the ones that are remaining and trying to keep going, I believe. Let's see what they're about. We haven't really heard anything from this chapter yet. I'm very curious.
In the modern world of Warhammer, the Craft World Eldar are the main force of Eldar in the galaxy and represent the elf style that many think of when you think elves in space. Fantasy elves in space, not those elves. We'll get to them.
Oh.
A craft world is a monumentally large starship, the size of a continent, that acts as a form of flotilla. During the highest reaches of hedonism, many Eldar saw the demonic writing on the wall and began to try and seek asylum from their own debauchery. Those Eldar left on monumental craft worlds into the far reaches of the galaxy and saved themselves from Slaaneish's awakening. The main thing the craft world Eldar seek is to temper their minds and bodies in a way that will never allow them to slide back into their old ways. The representation they carry is that of a more feudal Japanese motif. Eldar follow paths as they age, the path of the warrior, the seer, the poet, the diplomat, the bone singer, and so on. These paths are a strict code of conduct to hone the heightened Eldar psychology down a school of thought and action.
It actually makes a lot of sense that they would try to limit themselves that way, because when they didn't limit themselves, well, didn't end well, did it?
And if it sounds a hell of a lot like Bushido, well, you're damn right. Here's a medal and a soul stone. Don't lose it or an eternity of torment awaits you. Going through these paths will allow you to take up not just a role in Eldar society, but keep your mind clear from the past worries that plagued them. Every Eldar is said to be a psyker, however, very few of them actually utilize their psychic powers for fear of tempting she who thirsts. A large amount of emphasis is also put on ancestors of the Eldar and learning from them the farther you go down a path. This can sometimes be seen by the large variety of jewels adoring the armor of Eldar. Those are called soul stones, the biggest middle finger to Slaanesh they can think of. See, when an Eldar dies, these stones act as a backup, and instead of their souls going to Slaanesh, they are then trapped and stored in this little stone.
Oh, so they're like, yo, even if I freaking die, you still can't have my soul. I'd rather it be trapped in a rock forever. I wonder if like the souls are then somewhat feeling or conscious to an extent still, but probably not, I'd assume.
So when the Eldar say they commune with their ancestors, they mean so very literally, as the spirit and soul of generations before them are stored here. Often larger structures may contain vast amounts of soul stones, such as the Infinity Circuit in the craft world itself, allowing the souls of the dead to help power their enormous starship.
I see. So the souls do have some sort of power or energy, I guess.
Young do not desire the discipline of the path, but rather their curiosity drives them to try every fruit from the tree. Thus, it is that so many take the path of wandering or the path of damnation in their first years of adulthood. And so, the great tragedy of our kind is played out again and again as the number of our people shrink from generation to generation.
Well, I feel like that's every person who's young, right? Humans do that too. It's just that I guess it doesn't damn us as badly as it damns the Eldar.
These paths, when completed, allow an Eldar to move to the next one, then the next one. However, since this is the grim darkness of the world, many of these paths rely on combat. The Eldar actually had gods at one point. Cain, Vol, Isha, Azrayan, and so on.
What was the jar? Huh?
These gods are aspects of the Eldar pantheon, and while many were killed in Slaaneish's creation, their teachings live on. For some, the strongest devotion to the Eldar gods is to join the Aspect Warriors and embody the wrath of Cain, their god of war. While guardians of the Eldar craft worlds are more akin to a trained militia, the Aspect Warriors embody a particular variant of the path. Each are led by a Phoenix Lord, a name passed down from generations and embodying the souls of prior Phoenix Lords with each new one.
I will say Phoenix Lord sounds cool as shit. If we had Phoenix Lords in a human society, I would also want to be one of those. What do you mean?
The Howling Banshees, led by Jane Czar, Fugin and his Fire Dragons.
Fire Dragons? Howling Banshees? Why are we so boring with like how we call, for example, our military and stuff? Why are we so boring?
Haroth in his Swooping Hawks or Malgan Ra in his Dark Reapers. Each aspect shrine carries with it the Eldar way of war. Fast, hard-hitting, and incredibly tricksy, for they do not have the numbers to fight in any other way. The Craftworld Eldar show how mangled an empire can be by their own actions. They once ruled the galaxy in an honest, non-hyperbolic way. But
by the way, when he said they fight, I assume he means against other people, not against each other, right?
In the end, they were bested by themselves, and their most prominent remnants are forced to drift aimlessly through the galaxy, trying to save their species from extinction and resist the temptations of she who thirsts. But for some, the party, it's just beginning.
Let's go!
Deep within the webway is the city of Kamara. This dark city once existed as a port in the webway that allowed for ease of transport for the Eldar between its various domains. The significance of this city meant that it needed to be a bit more of a neutral territory outside of the jurisdiction of general Eldar law, and therefore it was allowed to self-govern. This did not go well. The Dark City became the hideaway for all manner of sin. The Eldar race slipped into debauchery on a galactic scale that it birthed a god, and this was the city you went to when that wasn't enough for you. The convenience of being so deep within the webway was that it exists as a blind spot to the horrors of the warp. So while the rest of the Eldar fled the downfall of their species, Kamara kept partying. When Slaanesh was birthed, they were saved the worst of it, thanks to them being nice and neatly tucked away inside the webway. But only somewhat. The Dark Prince did not have a grip around their soul, but the tiniest pinky finger, and they were still pulling. But due to their excess hedonism, they found a solution to this problem. If they tormented others, they could temporarily rejuvenate their souls and continue to cheat their inevitable death by placating the Prince of Pleasure. And if
Well, yeah, but torturing others is not good. I don't think they care, actually.
they kept this up on the regular, they could effectively become immortal. Thus, the Drukhari were born.
It kind of reminds me of that story of that one, I believe it was a countess who like kidnapped young girls from a village and then she would like bathe in their blood to stay young. I don't think it worked. I believe she's dead, so clearly she didn't gain immortality. But yeah, it's kind of what these guys are doing too.
Unlike the more stoic elves you see in works of fiction, the Drukhari themselves exist as a sort of analog of the more grim and fiendish elves you find in Norse and European mythology. The Drukhari are soul vampires, but the more basic means to feed are hardly enough to keep them going. This desire to feed is known as the thirst, and to quench it effectively, they have mastered the art of biotechnology and dark sciences to really juice themselves up on the crispy soul sprite from the vending machine called the Galaxy. The majority of Drukhari act as pirates and raiders and slavers. They go into our physical reality and drag people back to Kamara to commit atrocities that go beyond any imaginative torture a human can think of. The Drukhari are organized in various groups throughout the Dark City to accomplish this in a more organized and extremely brutal way. The Cabals act as the main warriors of the city, led by their archons. Witches and succubi act as entertainment for Kamara in gladiatorial arenas, and the flesh-crafting homunculus keep the Drukhari alive and discover ever-increasingly more painful ways to torment their ever-increasingly large supply of slaves they are brought. The Dark Eldar see the other inhabitants of the galaxy as little more than cattle. livestock that can be brought to bay or slaughtered at any time. Their fodder, however, is not meat and muscle, but the anguish and despair of the weak.
So when they say they feed, they don't feed on the flesh and blood, they feed on the agony and the soul of their victims, I guess.
The Dark Eldar do indeed drink blood.
Never mind. I should just let him talk. I'm just assuming things here. Just let him talk.
But also tears, and most sustaining of all, the raw essence of pain they wring out of their captives.
I will rate this as a bear. Number 1, I love tears. Delicious. Number 2, blood. Number 3, pain. I don't know. Pain is not very edible. I'm not like those Eldar that can profit off of souls, so pain is 3rd place.
The truth of the matter is that Drukhari sustain themselves on the suffering of others, not just morally, but physically. Kamara is a city rife with backstabbing schemes and murder. It is the worst back alleys of the worst ghettos at the best of times. Nothing is more horrifying to a Drukhari than death, for death will see them in the talons of Slaanesh for an eternity of torment. So they do everything they can to stop this. The homunculi covens regrow dead members from pieces of flesh as bargaining chips. The succubi create grisly gladiatorial spectacles that literally rejuvenate the audience members as captives are murdered for sport. To be captured by the Drukhari is one of, if not the worst fate imaginable in the world of Warhammer 40k.
Yo.
In a universe built on war crimes, they are the most debased war crimers of all time. To be tortured and sacrificed in the gladiatorial arenas is a blessing, for you have escaped the fate of being in the fleshsmith's control group, or being turned into a living and breathing piece of furniture.
Is that too sus to show? Damn. It does not sound pleasant to be a living and breathing piece of furniture. I'll say that much.
For an Archon's quarters. In a cruel twist of fate, a newly born Drukhari does not arrive into this world loving torture. It is something they must grow to love.
Why even make more Drukhari at that point? Isn't it better to just sustain the ones that you have infinitely? I feel like having a kid in that environment would just make me compete with the kid for the pain and anguish and the souls, you know?
Grow to appreciate the suffering of other beings in order to survive in the world they have been brought into. If they succeed, they become some of the worst monsters in the known galaxy. A dark reflection to the Craftworlders and a taste of what Eldar society was like before the fall. If they do not succeed, they must find purchase elsewhere. Often those will join smaller parts of Eldar society like the Exodites or the Harlequins. Exodites believe in a pre-industrial variant of their society, often retreating to more lush worlds to ride dinosaurs and live off the land.
That's my dream. That's where I would join. Riding dinosaurs is my dream. What do you mean?
Prehistoric style that I would normally laugh at if they weren't riding dinosaurs like ballers.
Right? That's so cool. There's actually a love hotel in Japan that I want to go to. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to go there for the love part. They have animatronic dinosaurs. That's the only reason I want to go. I don't care for everything else about that hotel, just the cool dinosaurs.
The Harlequin dancing troupe are a subsect of Eldar that are more than just a little strange. A carnival of dancing jesters that serve the Eldar laughing god of Kegarak. They arrive never when expected and leave just as quickly. Blurs of light carry their footsteps as they dance their foes into a grave. Combat is just as much of a joke as it is a play on bloody murder. They travel and aid many other Eldar and sometimes even humanity for reasons we can never understand.
So they're kind of the trickster archetype. I like that.
Perhaps one day we would have, were they not stripped of their army book and folded into the Eldari Codex. So I suppose it'll have to stay a mystery, or maybe it was one of Kegarak's master plans to get back at she who thirsts and save their species. Who can know? Perhaps it was all a sick and practical joke to Kegarak, and he would just find it very funny to watch me fumble the discussion of one human on a tiny blue planet across the galaxy. Oh, speaking of,
The Imperium of Man!
before the fall of the Eldar, Earth, or Terra as it's called, was in ruin. One man looks to put the pieces back together. Where did he come from? We don't know. Some say he was the result of early shamans. Some say he is the final old one who escaped their species' genocide. And those that are smartest know the answer is, it doesn't matter. He revealed himself as the Emperor of Mankind, and he was tasked with the most monumental upheaval of humanity possible. The Eldari's warp fluctuations had turned the golden age of humanity into old night. Interstellar travel cut off? Check. An AI uprising? Check. Brand new psychers popping up and not knowing how to handle their powers? Oh, check. Demonic incursions? Check. Thousands of years this occurred, and now the Emperor of Mankind showed himself to put the pieces back together. Unifying Terra under his rule, the Emperor founded the Imperium of Man and ruled it with an iron fist. He was the supreme leader and nothing could stand against him. He wished to remove—
Other than like his sons, no? Wasn't there a Horus heresy? Teehee. We're probably gonna learn about that in just a second.
mankind from the yoke of its former failures, and he knew he would be the best leader they could have because he was right. AI banned, religion banned. You did as the Emperor told you, or his Thunder Warriors would put you in your place. That place often being a grave. Now, Terra was thriving, but humanity needed to reclaim its long-lost brethren scattered across the stars. But to do so, he needed those that could build him a fleet truly meant for the reconquering of the galaxy. And so he turned his attention to the red planet of Mars.
Adeptus Mechanicus.
Mars and Terra were close allies long before the Unification Wars. Mars was the first world terraformed by humanity and became what would ultimately be the first hive world, an epicenter for industry and technology. The Age of Strife did not treat the Red Planet kindly, however. Mars was cut off from Terra during this time, and the warp storms that ravaged the planet turned it into an absolute nuclear hellscape. Those who were on the surface were turned into your run-of-the-mill mutant if they—
Oof, they look like they would be in pain.
They even survived the bombings they inflicted on themselves, but others were lucky enough to escape beneath the red sands in powerful fallout shelters. These became their generational habitats, but this resulted in extreme reliance on technology and those who could use it. They began to view the technology keeping them alive less as a technological advancement and more of a divine intervention, with those skilled in it as priests. The Martians began to worship the power of the machine, and this resulted in the formation of the Cult Mechanicus, the belief in a holy trinity known as the Three-in-One. The machine god, serving as the spirit who gave rise to all technologies known, the motive force, the deity that gives all life its ability to live, and the Omnissiah, a physical manifestation of the machine god itself. This belief began to manifest in them physically as well. What were once humans began to really mess around with the character creator options. And this tech obsession made them view instances of flesh to be weak and spend their lives removing what makes them human and replacing it with mechanical augments.
I think that is so interesting in theory, but then I always look at how weak, like literally weak, the human body is. And I always wonder, like, in reality, this wouldn't be so easy, right? Just thinking about how if people need a new organ, how high the chances are that your body won't even accept it. And then there's like all the different kinds of blood types and how easily things can get infected and stuff. So for me, looking at something like Cyberpunk just makes me a little bit nervous. I think I'll opt out of replacing body parts with machine parts for now until we've gotten, a bit better at handling all the side effects, because I'm sure there would be a ton. But, this is just Warhammer. This is not real. At least not, we're not that far in the timeline yet. Maybe in the future they have better technology for that.
Robotic limbs, glowing eyes, mechadendrite arms. What was once a mass of flesh now looks like the back of a router. And the oldest members of the Mechanicus no longer even look slightly human. In addition to this, cloaked over all of their mechanical appendages are robes that reflect the color of their homeworld.
They look hella cool though. I will say, if they already insist on terraforming their body into a machine, they're doing a great job at it.
Red robes of the Mechanicus. The Cult Mechanicum, now the Adeptus Mechanicus, create a fascinating combination of cultures all birthed into one. Basically, techno-zealot monks. Organic life is the machine god's greatest accomplishment within the scope of the great work. All praise he who is three in one. By giving us life within an organic shell, he presents us with the means and opportunity to improve upon physicality, as is his divine plan. He grants us complex weakness so we might learn metallic strength and ascend to his level of machinic perfection. The Emperor's arrival to Mars was very much a walking in with the pizzas while the room is on fire moment, but to the Mechanicum, they saw his arrival as confirmation of their belief. They took one look at the glowing golden entity that showed up on their doorstep and were like, that's him. That's the guy right there. And they immediately accepted him as the Omnissiah.
That is so freaking funny. They see one person from another planet go on there and he looks really impressive. They're like, wow, this is God. Like, it couldn't be anyone else. To be fair, I'm sure the Emperor looks incredibly impressive.
Obviously, showing up and being called Machine Jesus shortly after wiping out all instances of non-Machine Jesus a little bit beforehand is an instance of capital H heresy, but the Emperor saw the bigger picture. Were they strange with how they rubbed unguents on themselves, burned incense, and prayed to machines for them to work? Sure, but that's a lot of production right there. So the Emperor devised the Treaty of Olympus Mons, a unifying agreement between Terra and Mars, and this union would be permanently etched into the Aquila of the Imperium as the two-headed eagle. One head for Terra, the other for Mars. The forces of the Emperor would be supplied with all the technology and weapons they needed to reunite the scattered remnants of humanity under one banner, and the Mechanicum of Mars would be able to keep doing what they were doing religiously and scientifically so long as they kept up their tithes. This tithe meant total quality control over all technology in the Imperium. Is it a big spaceship? AdMech take care of that. Tanks? AdMech take care of that.
But it sounds like a good deal for them too, because that's kind of their thing anyways, right? So they would probably not even mind doing that.
The literal bullets in a gun, you guessed it, but unlike the factories of today, the forge worlds of Mars and the creations of the Mechanicum are a bit of a different experience altogether. Instead of a factory on a random given world, the entirety of the planet's surface is dedicated to manufacturing. But that's a little tricky, isn't it? Considering that the usage of silica animus, or AI, is a big no-no, and basically the largest affront to their divine machine.
Dude, that video in the background, please.
Machine god possible. Fortunately, there's a really neat alternative that they've come up with, and that's called a servitor. Incredible devices that can do anything from manufacturing, maintenance, basic door operation, even just float around like a helpful little drone. It's an extremely easy process too. All you need to do is take a human who is dying or preferably an enemy of the state, most likely that one, and lobotomize them. And then reprogram their brains to do exactly what they tell you. They even got little baby versions of them. Yay! So now you can rest easy knowing that the entirety of the Imperium, because they outlaw AI and learning new tech is heresy, is run on lobotomized slaves.
So I understand AI can be bad. It was not good for humanity at one point. But really? Is this the best solution we have? Can we not just say, oh, they're on Mars, so it's okay if they use the AI over there, and we'll just pretend it's not happening on Terra? How about that? Like, why are we lobotomizing people?
Whether they deserve it or not is unimportant, and whether they can still keep their consciousness trapped in their own minds is another thing entirely.
Your incompetence is showing.
An excerpt from the Servitor creation factories. Naked human beings were standing in a switch-packed line between high fences. The manufactorum produced servitors, but it was more akin to an abattoir than a workshop. Every surface was easily cleanable. Servitors with spray units surgically attached to their backs prowled about, hosing filth from slit drains set into the perfectly smooth, slanted floors. As the line slowly advanced, the people were passed through various scanning devices, most of them mounted in ugly, functional arches that let out a constant series of acceptance chimes. Occasionally, one would let out an angry blare, and the indicator lumens would flash red. The rejected person was then swallowed up by a trapdoor opening beneath their feet. From these pits wafted a hideous stench and the grinding sounds of industrial mincers. One rejected man grabbed onto the lip and hung there, arms and hands bloodied, shouting a stream of defiant profanities. Guards lined the grating either side of him and shocked him until he fell. The adepts wouldn't even waste bullets on these people. The trapdoor flipped up, and the next terrified person was ushered forward. Violent metal arms snatched them up and spread-eagled them in the air, and a servitor shearer shaved them all over. At another, they were subjected to a high-pressure counter-septic wash whose chemical stink made me choke from 100 feet away. More scanners, more rejects winnowed out. Machines forcibly dressed them in a heavy, rubberized garment common to all monotask servitors. These were saggy on them, all one size, until another process shrank them to fit their bodies where metal cuffs, sockets, and collars bit into vulnerable flesh. The last few prayers gave way to screams at that point, and even the most stoic shouted in pain. They were ushered over a floor buzzing with power that made them shriek with every footstep.
So was that pre-lobotomy or post-lobotomy? Also, that sounds fucked up as hell, but again, this is Warhammer.
What's that for? I asked. Follicular inhibitor. To stop their hair from growing, he said. Freaking sweet, Lois! As for their scientific pursuits, the Mechanicum believe in the preservation of knowledge above all and the quest to expand it. However, as opposed to just innovating and inventing on their own with their vast technological know-how, they believe that it is a form of tech heresy. You see, because of their religious viewpoints on technology itself, they believe that the instruction booklet itself is just as holy as the Lego set it builds. And to innovate on that without the proper written knowledge is to go against the divine word of the machine god itself. All knowledge is already in the universe. You simply need to rediscovering it and attempting to invent something to improve upon divinity is very heretical. Prior to the Age of Strife, humanity was able to populate the stars with devices known as Standard Template Constructs, or STCs. These devices were, as far as we know, supercomputers with the ability to pull up and detail how to create literally anything a startup colony would need. Essentially, they were devices with the entirety of human technological know-how so that you could make a home away from home. The Mechanicum will not make anything without an STC. Quite literally nothing, because this is the knowledge they seek, and that knowledge is divine. One time, scouts of the Imperial Guard found a functioning STC that provided the schematics on a knife that happened to be a bit lighter and a bit sharper than most other knives. These knives were adopted by 30 Space Marine chapters and were one of the most advanced discoveries of the century. This discovery was so significant that they were each awarded a planet for finding this.
A planet? Whoa, okay, that's a crazy reward. When will I get a planet as a reward? Hello?
A planet for a machine that taught them how to make knives. Due to their religious organization, you can probably guess the Mechanicum are organized in a feudal structure with the highest individuals in power being a part of the priesthood. Cream of the crop being the fabricator general of Mars itself, who serves as a high lord of Terra, but also oversees the entirety of the Mechanicum below. Below them are tech priests that oversee the cult for the quest of knowledge and other more straightforward theocracy. Forge worlds tend to operate slightly more independently, what can cause some power struggles within the Mechanicum, because, you know, despite them all being weird robots, they love being given praise. And despite being the manufacturing end of the Imperium, they do actually have their own military forces. They have the Skitarii Private Army and all their various 1920s Martian-style mechanisms like Doom Crawlers, Castellan robots, and of course, the Titan Legions. Because nothing is cooler than a robot that towers over buildings.
Dude, that is a really cool looking robot. I'm not even that much into robots or mechs or anything like that, but even I find that cool. Come on.
Ultimately, their very dogmatic view on technology as a whole has resulted in any innovation becoming absent, thus causing the Imperium to stagnate as a whole. The lack of ambition to create anything new and the wholesale murder of anyone who even tries leads to things becoming derelict. I grow weary of this flesh I was born into, strangely disgusted by its nature. I crave only the cold, clean certainty of steel and silicon, that I might become one with the blessed machine.
Based. I mean, look at the human body and all its liquids and bodily fluids. Gross. If I could be made out of metal, nah, it sounds like it would be really heavy to carry around. Maybe not.
I do not expect you to understand, you who cling to your flesh as if it were immortal, seeking only to preserve it, to protect it. One day you will see the folly of your ways, and then no doubt you will come begging to my order to preserve you. After the groundwork had been set unification-wise, it was time to start getting things together for the Emperor's great crusade across the stars to bring humanity under one banner. The Thunder Warriors were a perfect fighting force for unifying Terra and Luna, but the galaxy was a whole different thing. You see, these warriors weren't soldiers in the eyes of the Emperor. They were tools, extremely blunt tools used for the fast conquest of Terra. As the Emperor was concerned, the tools you use at home aren't the same ones you take on a road trip. So the Emperor rid himself of his tools in the exact manner you think he did, and he went forward to crafting a brand new tool.
Murder? Murder?
One more mobile, more efficient, and ready for his next era of conquest.
His
They
sons.
shall be my finest warriors, these men who give up
Space Marines, right?
themselves to me. Like clay, I shall mold them, and in the furnace of war forge them. They will be of iron will and steely muscle. In great armor shall I clad them, and with the mightiest guns will they be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease. No sickness will blight them. They will have tactics, strategies, and machines so that no foe can best them in battle. They will be my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my soul.
Space Marines! Let's go! Hi guys. If you're enjoying this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you. I'll say that pitch sounded really good. They seem like amazing warriors. Hell yeah.
Shall know no fear. The vastness of the Milky Way galaxy meant that the Emperor needed assistance bringing everyone back to the fold. And who better to do this than himself? But since the technology to be in many places at once does not exist anymore, the Emperor decided that it was time to become a dad, the same way Geppetto did, and with far less care. It is not my son, Archon. None of them are. They are warlords, generals, tools bred to serve a purpose, just as legions were bred to serve a purpose. What a dad. The Primarch project was started to create charismatic and unique leaders in the Imperial military. The diversity of these eventual leaders meant that each one could be specialized for certain circumstances across the galaxy. Depending on the type of conflict, one leader might be better than the other. So instead of forcing one leader to acclimate to a situation directly, it would be better to send a specialized leader and force to handle it. In order to do this, the Emperor used his genetic know-how and maybe a little bit of that forbidden stuff to create these genetically perfect gene fathers that had the ability to serve as his analog directly, and also serve as the leaders of the respective Space Marine legions. All 20 All 18, that's right, all 19 of his
Huh?
sons were meant to be directly molded by the Emperor himself, despite their genetic differences. And they go as follows in order. Lionel Johnson, Fulgrim, Percherabo, Jagatai Khan, Lehman Russ, Rogel Dorn, Conrad Kurz, Sanguinius, Ferris Manus, Angron, Robute Gilliman, Mortarion, Magnus the Red, Horus Lupercal, Lorgar Aurelian, Vulcan, Corvus Corax, and Alfarius and Omegon.
That's a lot of sons that he got. Actually, I've heard a couple of those names before. Again, mainly from my Twitch chat talking about them. So I'm not sure how relevant all of these guys are. I know some of them definitely are, at least in the tabletop game. But I'm curious to see which ones have actually notable history to them. I assume if you read the books and stuff, there will probably be info about every single one of them, right?
His sons, finalized and crafted to be the warriors he needed them to be, were complete. But he may have decided to do a bit of dabbling with things he shouldn't have, and paid a price. Before the Primarchs were ready to go, an intervention by the gods of chaos prevented his plan from being completed as intended. Though the sources vary, the ultimate result of the Chaos God intervention was that all of the Emperor's tools were scattered throughout the galaxy at unknown places and times. Each one of his sons ended up in a completely different world, and instead of being able to directly influence their upbringing, these children were instead forced to experience the unique nature of their respective homeworlds. Some had a great time and lived in general luxury. Others, not so much.
Oof.
Despite his closest advisor, Malkador the Sigillite, saying, "All right, Chief, let's try this one again," the Emperor sensed each of his sons were still very much alive. And one of the primary objectives of the Great Crusade shifted to reclaiming each of his sons so they could take command of their specific Space Marine legions and carry out his will.
So are they like genetically his sons? I didn't quite get that. I would assume there's at least some genetics that they share, right?
These original Space Marine legions that were created alongside their Primarchs go in order: the Dark Angels, Emperor's Children, Iron Warriors, White Scars, Space Wolves, Imperial Fists, Night Lords, Blood Angels, Iron Hands, World Eaters, Ultramarines, Death Guard, Thousand Sons, Luna Wolves, eventually Sons of Horus, the Word Bearers, Salamanders, Raven Guard, and the Alpha Legion.
And they all look sick. They all look super cool.
Space Marines, unlike their gene fathers, the Primarchs, are not made in a vat. There is a process to recruit more members from humanity itself, which seems a bit strange considering how massive a Space Marine is compared to a normal man, but don't forget, the Emperor is really good with genetics. Less good with anesthetic, however. These prospects are recruited across humanity from various reasons and methods, and are generally killed during that process. But sometimes they aren't, and they are able to go through more and more of the actual training to assess certain traits that are important and relevant to being a Space Marine.
For a second, I thought that it's just corpses, that all the Space Marines are corpses. But I think what he meant was that most die, but those who survive become Space Marines, I guess.
Most of the time, the common factor is a pure, unrelenting willingness to kill the enemies of the Imperium. After going through psychological screening, the prospect, now called a neophyte, goes under the knife to become a Space Marine. And here is a quick list of all the cool new stuff they get genuinely shoved into their bodies. A secondary heart, an organ that makes your bones grow, an organ that makes your muscles big, an implant that makes your blood stronger, a little organ that turns your white blood cells into super white blood cells, a brain implant that allows you to sleep while being awake,
Yo, that's sick.
pre-stomach that allows you to digest literally anything, a spinal implant that allows you to absorb the genetic memories of what you eat, bigger and better lungs that can let you breathe underwater, an implant that gives you stronger eyes, new ears that keep you from being dizzy, a brain implant that lets you go into suspended animation if you're in a bad shape, skin that acts like transition glasses, I almost got it in one take, a brand new kidney, the ability to taste the air and find enemies like a bloodhound, a special coating on your skin that allows you to be protected in space, the ability to spit acid, a gland that allows you to absorb the unique genetic makeup from the gene seed in the first place, and a straight up carapace that allows the Space Marine to interface with their power armor directly.
Yeah, that surgery doesn't sound fun. Like, I will say, very cool abilities that they have. They will definitely be super warriors after they got all that shit implanted into their bodies. But once again, like, human bodies are kind of fragile, so I can imagine this ain't fun for anyone, right?
Quite often, these are put inside of you at dubious levels of mental alertness and dubious levels of anesthetic. After a more generalized indoctrination into the faith of the Imperium and a bit more training and other important manners, they can finally be welcomed as a fully fledged Space Marine. A Space Marine is quite literally a walking tank that is armed to the teeth. Two of the more iconic weapons held by a Space Marine are their bolt gun, which fires explosive shells the size of soda cans, and a chain sword, which is
A chainsword.
The Space Marine is clad in a colorful carapace known as power armor, crafted from extremely heavy and durable ceramite. The power armor of a Space Marine protects him from any terrors he may face, be it the void of space itself to an inhospitable atmosphere. This armor, combined almost biologically with an already massive physique, makes the Space Marine an almost unstoppable fighting force. And hell, if the armor doesn't protect them enough, they can always become a walking coffin like the dreadnoughts of the chapters are. What truly adds to it all, however, is the sheer difference in some of them. While a Space Marine in its own right is an indoctrinated freight train on legs, how they act can be quite different from chapter to chapter. The gene seed of a Primarch is not just helping them become big and strong, but allows them to gain certain traits from their forefathers. Everything from how they think to even slightly adjusting their physical appearance once it's been implanted, the gene seed can be the personality of an entire Space Marine. Take the Salamanders, for example. Salamanders have a predisposition to fire as a whole, and tend to be extremely large due to the size of their Primarch, Vulcan, and his enormous stature. Whereas someone like Sanguinius, Primarch of the Blood Angels, share more vampiric features and more angel-like qualities. A gene seed is not just aspects of the Primarchs, but they are also flaws too. Magnus the Red and his 1,000 Sons underwent something known as the Flesh Change, a horrifying mutation that, while it made them strong psychers, would affect their bodies so terribly that they would mutate away from humanity. Where other factions have inspiration for their culture from our real world, like the feudal Japanese of the Eldar or Egyptian style the Necrons, each Space Marine chapter themselves carry an inspiration. The White Scars are motorcycle riding Mongolian fighters. The Space Wolves are Norse Vikings. The Dark Angels are Knights of the Round Table, and so on. This moves into their fighting style, and truthfully, there is no end to the characters and options when it comes to the Space Marines. Space Marines are the main symbol you see, and while many of them can be simply indoctrinated warriors who only care about conflict and can be quite boring, then you meet Dante, or Bjorn, or Argel Tal, or Karn, or Lucius, or Erebus. And then you discover the wealth of these characters and tools of war you can have. For 1100 years, I have fought and I have seen the darkness in our galaxy. I have seen the vileness of the alien and the heresy of the mutant. I have witnessed the sin of possession, and I have seen all the evil that the galaxy harbors, and I have slain all whose presence defiles the Emperor. I have seen what you will see. I have fought what you must fight, and I have slain what you must slay. So fear not and be proud, for we are the sons of Sanguinius, the protectors of mankind. We are indeed the angels of death. Despite being the poster children for Warhammer 40k as a whole, the presence of a Space Marine is a rare sight for the countless trillions of humans across the galaxy. Seeing one of these monstrosities is like seeing something akin to an angel sent by the Emperor himself. These angels of death are the essential fighting force to bring humanity back under the unified banner of the Imperium. Yet ultimately, the Space Marines are individuals torn from their families and conscripted to genetic modification and lifelong service for the dying Imperium. And though they are held in an almost holy light, most believe they are above and beyond the people they are designed to serve. Once designed as the protectors of humanity, they seldom view humanity as something worth saving. to the extent that it is
Damn.
a tiny, minute rarity, though not unheard of, for a Space Marine to put a normal citizen above them in any way. For most Space Marines and even their Primarchs, they are only here to do a job. They are there to kill the enemies of humanity, and I would be remiss if I didn't add at least one more of my favorite quotes to the tail end of this section. "The time for speeches is done," said Rogel Dorn. "The first great test is here. My order to you all is simple, yet heed it well, and exert yourselves to see it done. They are coming. Kill them all." While the Space Marines are the spearhead of the Imperium's Great Crusade and also a major player in its warfare, there is a significant amount of importance that must be taken on their transport. What sci-fi universe would be complete without its navy? When you think of the navy or ships on the open sea, you think of something that is sleek, something mobile, and something pretty big. For perspective, the longest self-propelled ship in history was the TTC-Wise Giant, an oil tanker that was about 458 meters long or over about 1,500 feet. This right here is child's play in the world of 40k ships.
Oh.
A ship that is considered to be an escort vessel in the Imperium is about 3 times the size of a Sea-Wise Giant, and the size of the ships only go up from there. Your most common ships are the cruisers. The light cruiser tends to average at about 2 kilometers long, or just over a mile in length.
That is so big. But that's kind of what I love about a lot of science fiction stuff, is how big like the spaceships and the space stations get. I think that's super cool. Like, I can't imagine how it would look in real life. Probably too fucking big, but you know, I think that's super cool.
Where the Dictator class cruisers can be over 3 kilometers or 2 miles in length. The largest ships are your battleships, and they are tremendous. We're talking 5-mile long, half a mile high monstrosities that look like gigantic Gothic cathedrals and filled to the brim with weaponry. And not only are they filled with weapons, but they are also jam-packed with crewmen. Battleships tend to, on average, carry a crew between several thousand to several million, and they need every single one of those members because we don't have advanced technology for other things to pilot themselves or control themselves in a meaningful way because there's no AI.
Oh. See, again, like, I understand the AI took over, it was very dangerous, but like, isn't it possible to do it in a controlled manner? I don't know.
A lot of this stuff has to be done manually. Even the reloading of those giant batteries is a form of manual labor. And, of course, generally speaking, gliding through the stars is a very slow way to do things.
Well, you know what? I will say, at the very least, the AI is not taking anyone's job here. The job security in the Imperium apparently is fantastic.
And let's be honest, there can't be a science fiction setting without some form of hyperspace travel.
Yeah.
This form of travel in 40k is less like going to Plaid in Spaceballs and more like going into Davy Jones' zipper dimension in SpongeBob.
Oh, now what? I suppose you're gonna show me. Oh, gee, that's very nice. Oh, what is this? Some kind of magic act?
This is because it utilizes the immaterial warp to do so. Warp travel is handled by a navigator, which is an abhuman. It's a mutated human, don't worry about it. And they have a gene that gives them a third eye and the ability to help steer the ship through the warp, which, as we know, is hell itself and unreality. Now, this might sound exceptionally dangerous, and that's because it is. Now, the ship does have protection in the form of a Geller field, though. Originally, I assumed the Geller field is what you think it is, a large force field stopping all manner of horrible things, like demons from the warp tearing apart your ship. How wrong I was, though. So space travel through the warp basically involves riding on the Sea of Souls. Hell is real and you can surf on it. So you allow the current to carry you and the navigator to direct. But how can a current of souls and unreality carry you when it doesn't obey the laws of physics, time, or, again, reality? What a Geller field is not a force field, but a comatose Imperial psyker dreaming of reality. It is not a bubble. It is a force of reality being projected by mutant Sleeping Beauty to counteract the unreality of the warp that you can then surf on. This, of course, is not a foolproof method of travel, and Geller fields can and do collapse fairly regularly. Being subjected to the warp itself without this Geller field is a terrifying prospect. In the best case scenario, your ship will be torn to shreds, but there are countless instances of ships being thrown out of the warp randomly throughout time itself. You leave for a 2-day mission and you come back 90 years in the past.
Damn.
Maybe you feel like you're lost in the warp for a century and it's only been 45 minutes. And that is only if the waves of souls don't rip your ship apart or have demons arrive on it to do unspeakable things to the crew. The Imperial Navy is an astronomically powerful force for the Imperium because the sheer volume of ships and guns on those ships create firepower that can sunder planets. This is all juxtaposed with the sheer backwater nature of these ships. While they are manned by crews of zealots, they are also operated with such a backwater tech, it completely confuses the reader. You see the long batteries of portside cannons that the ship has, and remember that AI is heresy in this world and that all the mechanics are utilized by lobotomized slaves. So how do they load these? Well, they have gun gangs, massive gangs of hundreds of people manually loading these cannons. These are genuine gun loader gangs that get into gang wars and squabbles.
What?
On the ship's bridge, you may find the captain himself hardwired directly into the ship's chair permanently to control it the best they can.
Forever? Like, even after the mission's done, they just stay up there? They're just a tool? I guess that would fall in line with everything we've heard so far. Also, hearing all this just makes me think how many thousands of stories you could be telling about this universe.
Giant screens of hololith data fill the room, and sensors across the ship are just as likely to tell you information as a serf running up to you with a scroll of parchment is. You reach to a microphone to shout orders down a hallway as paper readouts tell you information of the enemy, and holy sigils and candlelit incense burners gleam your next move. While the
Imperial baby?
a specific faction.
Sorry, the Imperial Navy. I think I misread that. It popped up so quick, and my model probably blocked the view for you guys.
Of the Imperium.
Shit, sorry, never mind.
In the same sense and format of this video, it is what shepherds around the entirety of its armed forces. Every Space Marine Primarch had a flagship, and every strike cruiser and battle barge has a story to tell. But if there is a single thing that the Shield of the Navy does the best, it is to help support and supply the monumental forces of the Imperium. The hammer of the Emperor himself, the uncountable men and women of the
Imperial Guard. I've heard of the Imperial Guard. What do they do? No clue, but I've heard the name before.
I don't care if these things have adapted to resist our las guns. If we can't kill them with our rifles, then we'll kill them with heavy bolters. And if we can't kill them with heavy weapons, we'll use grenades. And if grenades don't work, then we'll fight them with our swords and our knives and our bare hands. We'll drown them in our blood. That's what it means to be a soldier of the Imperial Guard. Now follow me. Charge! There is no better symbol of the might of the Imperium itself than the Astra Militarum, or as it is commonly known, the Imperial Guard. Though the Space Marines take the glory and stand as the visual representation of the Imperium, their numbers are dramatically thin and specialized in comparison. To reclaim 1,000,000 worlds, you need a countless number of troops willing to fight and die for your cause. The Imperial Guard represents the Imperial truth made manifest. Every year, the worlds of the Imperium pay a tithe in the form of soldiers to fight the good fight of the Emperor, and this number is impossible to pin down. Even saying billions would be a dramatic understatement.
Whoa.
The sheer volume of soldiers serves as the fundamental backbone of the Imperium. 99.9% of battles fought by the Imperium are fought by the sundering might of the Imperial Guard. With the knowledge that the Space Marines are essentially sentient tanks, what do the members of the Imperial Guard have? If they're the might of the Emperor himself, are they not suited up in a similar way? No. Not really. No fancy suits, no biological enhancements, and basically no expectation to live. Once a regiment of Guard are activated, they are sent directly into battle with almost no expectations that they will survive.
So they're just like cannon fodder? Or more like, I suppose we're just trying to win by sheer numbers alone, and it doesn't matter how many are lost? So the lives of them are just not valued?
This is because, despite their training, their incredibly powerful armor, and extremely strong weapons that would crush any army of the modern day, they are so hopelessly outmatched to the things they will face. Sending a member of the Guard is throwing a rock at a nuclear bomb. However, where they lack in advancement, they make up for in sheer numbers, and their overwhelming force can be the difference maker in any deployment they face. Quantity is a quality all its own. If they do happen to survive, they will be sent to the next battle, and so on. Seldom do members of the Astra Militarum get old or retire, and those that do are truly to be feared. There's an old saying that the average lifespan of a guardsman is about 15 hours from deployment, and considering the sheer number of guardsmen out there in any given battle, that number is probably accurate.
But why do they want to do this? Or are they forced to join the Imperial Guard? I don't know, if someone told me like, oh, you'll be joining the military, you will never retire or grow old, and you might live like maybe 15 hours if you're really lucky. That doesn't sound like a great deal to me.
When several million of your pool of guardsmen die within the first few hours of combat because the orcs threw a moon at you, it can really screw the numbers. The soldiers of the Guard are conscripted and trained on an incredible number of worlds in the Imperium, and these worlds can impact their training and their combat style directly. The most famous visually are the Cadian shock troops.
Wait, why is he crying? What about them?
But other notable Guard factions include the gas mask clad Death Corps of Krieg, the Rambo level of Catachan jungle fighters, and the iron willed Mordian Iron Guard. This also helps them specialize against individual types of enemies. The Indigan Prefects are a special guard regiment that came from a planet whose planetary governor, the leader of the planet, thought it was fun to collect exotic animals, which then crossbreed and then became the giant freight train-sized monsters destroying the planet. So the Indigan Prefects are specialized for big monsters.
Okay.
Hello, Tyranids. One particularly interesting officer in the Guard is the enforcement officer known as the Commissar, and they are one of the more visually striking members of a regiment. These are specialized Imperial officers and act as morale officers. But instead of singing songs to the troops and providing hot meals, the Commissars are there to make sure that the members of the regiment continue to fight to the bitter end. If a soldier does not meet the standards of the Commissar, the solution is simple.
Kill.
There are trillions of other soldiers out there. We don't really need you. Combat fatigue? Headshot. Concerns about the conflict? Headshot. Fleeing the battlefield?
Headshot.
I bet that's a headshot. Considering that these officers tend to be outside of their regiment, feelings on them can be mixed. And in fairness, certain commissars like the esteemed Ibram Gaunt or Caiaphas Kane tend to do a bit better with the whole people talking part, because if, say, you were trying to tell a beefed up Catachan jungle fighter what to do, you might take a mysterious leave of absence inside a carnivorous plant. But no matter what I say, I don't think I can truly convey the sheer might of the Imperial Guard, so I'm gonna get a visual aid. Let's take a look at this image right here, right? This is the cover of the 9th edition Codex for the Astra Militarum, the official cover art. Your eyes may be drawn to the dark and brutal looks of some of the main members on the front and the gigantic orc they are attacking, but zoom out a little bit. There is no floor. There is only people, and behind those people are tanks, and behind those tanks are flying artillery shells. There are 2 enormous transport ships in the sky, and their ramps are down, and on their ramps are more people. The Imperium is described as having 1,000,000 worlds. 1,000,000
That's a lot.
worlds. And each one of them gives soldiers to the Imperial Guard for the tithe. On a given battlefield, in a given fight, foot soldiers number in the millions, tanks in the tens of thousands, and you have enough artillery to turn the night sky day. You have walkers and APCs and aircraft and horse cavalry and tanks the size of apartment buildings. You have drop troops and spec ops and rattling snipers and gigantic ogres that can't count to 4, but they can turn you into 4 pieces, and it just doesn't end. Humanity is a horde army, but instead of a horde of bugs or rampaging orcs, it's a living wall of guns. At the end of the day, though he's been ferried through hell on a ship that's 10,000 years old to some godforsaken war-torn rock, though he deployed from high orbit with nothing but a grav chute, though he is one of 10 million men and women snatched from his homeworld to fight a war he barely understands, though he has been given a weapon that fires small suns and may annihilate him as he fires because the knowledge of how it functions has been lost, though his company is supported by tractor tanks that run on anything you can burn, though he wages war against the devouring hive mind, ravenous demons and hordes of hyper-advanced aliens with strange technologies and sorceries he never dreamed existed. No one will remember his sacrifice. There will be no records of his deeds, no glorious parades in his honor, and no remembrance of his name. All he will earn is a shallow, unmarked grave on a forgotten world untold light years from home.
He will get a grave? Like, even an unmarked one? I would assume they just leave the dead bodies everywhere. Like, I don't even think they would care that much.
Yet for all this thankless sacrifice, a guardsman is a man, just like you. He has no millennia-old genetic engineering, no prophetic leader, no miracles of faith. He has his lasgun, his orders, and those beside him. He is the Imperial Guard, and he will hold the line. In the end, the Astronautarum, despite fighting for the honor of the Imperium, are their own form of a massive horde army where individuality does not matter. They are merely numbers to the Imperium, and the vast majority of the conflicts they are sent to are attrition-based battles that gain virtually no ground while countless millions die. Yet this makes them the most human. For the Imperial Guard contains normal people, people who are happy and sad, people who laugh and love, and in there are stories, because there is strength in facing the horrors of the universe head on with nothing but a rifle in your hands and a prayer on your lips. Armed with an innumerable amount of Imperial soldiers and Space Marines, the Navy begins its great crusade into the stars to rescue the stranded Primarchs and reunite them to their legions. But the biggest question needed to be asked was, what would they find? The age of strife lasted for thousands of years. If a civilization was still alive out there in the galaxy, what would they be like? The technological advancements of humanity prior to and during the Dark Age technology was unfathomable. It allowed them to spread through the galaxy with ease and allowed them to settle once inhospitable planets. These branches of humanity were provided with the vast knowledge of human creations and were given gigantic machines to make arduous labor and ease. The spreading of these massive colony ships was known as the Long March, and these ships would be retrofitted into settlements upon arrival to their new homes. Accompanying them were the gigantic pieces of farm equipment that served multiple purposes and the specialized pilots that could maintain them. They were not only able to tend the fields and do labor, but when interstellar communication was cut off, they also did a great job of protecting the colonists against both threats demonic and alien. Because of the significance of these machines, those that could pilot them were powerful enough to be considered leaders, and the upkeep and preservation of the machines and the lineage of those who could pilot them was imperative. These machines, over the thousands of years, would eventually be known as
the Imperial Knights. Really? The farming machines were the Imperial Knights? See, I've also heard that before, but I think to an extent in my head, I thought that probably Imperial Knights, Imperial Guard, Space Marine, they're all the same thing. And now I'm learning they're all different things. Pretty cool.
He must be humble of heart, strong of arm, be savage in war, loyal to hearth, and follow deeds of glory. He must keep honor with all, banish cowardice from his doings, and bring his house no shame. He must serve the Emperor and defend the Imperium, thus should a knight rule himself. The age of strife caused these colonized worlds to be cut off from the Imperium, and the reversion of these worlds resulted in the reverence for this farm equipment turned feudal, and the leadership that controlled the devices became viewed as a noble hierarchy. During the Age of Strife, exploratory fleets from Mars found plenty of these worlds, and it seemed the majority of them reverted to a similar state. Like King Arthur seeing Merlin himself, these feudal worlds welcomed the tech priests of Mars with open arms. The mutual relationship between the Admech and the nobility was beneficial. The Admech were able to secure more worlds for mining resources and potentially long-lost STC information, and the noble houses were provided with technological know-how and modifications from the Admech themselves. The
Good deal, not gonna lie. Sounds like both of them got something out of that.
suits became more and more specialized, and their history as mere pieces of equipment were lost to time.
Dude, the farming's gonna go hard. They're gonna farm harder than ever before.
What was once a tractor became a killdozer,
Ooh.
and the Imperial Knights were born. Unlike other military aspects in the Imperium, the nobility of the Knight houses remains just that, a nobility-focused feudal hierarchy that swears fealty to either the Mechanicum or to Terra. Like the Knights in our history, once they swear fealty, they can be called to aid their respective allegiance in the heat of battle. The ones that swear fealty to Terra are led by the High Monarch, while the ones with the Mechanicum are led by the Princeps. The ones with Terra might be sent directly to the front line of war, while the ones with the Mechanicum tend to be sent to protect the Forge world. And the heraldry of these houses is what you'd expect from a generic history of knights. Houses pledging allegiances here and there, your run-of-the-mill War of the Roses aesthetic. Except instead of ponies, you have gigantic death machines. These knights can't seem to be piloted by any old person, however. A member of the nobility of any given knight house must go through the ritual of becoming. This ritual involves them sitting on the device used to control the knight, known as the Throne Mechanicum.
Let me guess. They're gonna fuse with the machine and they won't be able to leave it ever again.
For a full night. What's wrong with that? I mean, sitting in a chair for a full evening sounds pretty great right about now. So, a pilot cannot drive a knight. They can, but it moves about as effective as Ripley from Aliens 2, big, lifter thing. It is, in a sense, a beast that must be controlled, and a pilot must merge with it. The mind of the noble is connected to the machine and must fight with the mental signatures and personalities of the prior pilots as well. Everything a knight experiences in battle is felt by the pilot themselves, be it the general movement in the battlefield or damage sustained by the machine itself. If a knight's leg is blown off in battle, the pilot could experience a broken bone in the same spot.
I
The merging to the
see.
machine forever changes the mentality of the noble that experiences it.
But at least when you're inside of that thing, you don't lose your leg too. It just breaks. So it's not as dangerous. But also technically, the whole suit could be destroyed too, right? So you would still be able to die.
This connection reinforces a strong degree of nobility and honor in the pilot, and a desire to fight for the glory of their house until the bitter end, as their ancestors' minds are linked directly to the knight. The size of these knights can vary, but generally speaking, they stand in the ballpark of 30 to 50 feet tall, and are protected by a thick adamantium armor. Beyond that, they have their own unique ion shield generators that give them added protection, and when it comes to their looks, the most common pattern across the Imperium is the Questoris pattern, and is honestly the one you're probably thinking about right now. But there are also
Nope, I wasn't thinking about anything.
smaller versions like Armigers and bigger ones known as the Dominus. As for a loadout, these guys are essentially a violent Mr. Potato Head. Battle cannons, Gatling cannons, heavy flamers, thermal cannons, up close and personal, how about a gigantic chainsword or a straight up gauntlet? And for that empty spot up top, screw it. More autocannons, maybe add some missiles. Whatever you can do to make it as over the top as possible, you gotta do it. A squire serves a knight serves a lord serves a baron, and a baron serves a monarch. So who does the monarch serve?
Themselves?
He serves every subject, from the rudest serf to the members of the court. Chivalric fealty, when ideally practiced, is not a pyramid, but a circle. Ironically, on the surface, night worlds themselves are one of the least grim, dark settings in the galaxy. Reverting to an ancient time with knights and peasants is almost an escapism from the techno-hell of the modern Imperium.
Right?
This, of course, doesn't make it great for everyone. It sounds fun on paper to play a game of knights, but it's not so fun when you're the peasant of that world. For the knights themselves, the knights give their entire lives to the Throne Mechanicum, and their reality is not their own, as they have to hear the voices of thousands of generations of their ancestors controlling their actions and their lives for as long as they live. It's a strange dichotomy. When it comes to Warhammer, most to all jobs tend to be terrible. However, if there was one that could be considered enjoyable, it would be the pilot of a knight, or a princeps of their larger cousins. While it does contain an egregious amount of hardship to be a knight pilot, you do enjoy a wealth of privilege. A knight pilot is often an asshole who can back it up. The rich noble that, despite his braggadocious behavior, is still very much him, and he will continue to be him. But knights are not the only thing that the Imperium found lost in the stars during their Great Crusade.
I'm just wondering, how would it be enjoyable if they're fused with the machine and they constantly hear the thoughts of their ancestors? Is it just only enjoyable because all the other options are so bad that this seems enjoyable, or what is it?
Due to the circumstances of the Age of Strife, humans were changing and adapting to their new homes they were now isolated on. Some of these humans evolved over thousands of years to adapt to these areas, and they were known as abhumans. Many abhumans found their way into the Imperial Guard or other lesser positions in the Imperium if they were not wiped out immediately for being too different from their human counterparts. But their abilities and appearance vary from planet to planet, and one particular group of abhumans have made quite a name for themselves in the center of the galaxy.
Oh, who? The Leagues of Votann? Dotam? I'm sorry, the first letter, I can't tell what it is. But aka the kin.
The origins of what will be known as the kin start at some point during the Dark Age technology, where their ancestors left a planet that is very much Terra and went to the galactic core to mine it of its resources. They brought along with them everything that they would need for a long-term stay, most important of which were the incredible AI-based supercomputers, be it guidance, technical or philosophical, schematics, or the ability to upload the memories of a deceased explorer to gather information from them. These computers became an essential part of their everyday life, especially considering that the galactic core is one of the most inhospitable places in the galaxy. It is an exceptionally star-dense location, full of abnormalities, black holes, and sentient hostile nebula. Whatever that last part means, it is not a safe and easy place to make a living, and this only got worse thanks to the warp storms during the Age of Strife. In order to adapt to this area, these travelers perfected a genetic makeup that made their future clones to be more adept to the area. These future clones would be shorter and more robust than their ancestors, and the need to procreate would be unnecessary because why risk messing up a good employee when you can just make a new one? These would be known as the squats, and they would all die, except for when they didn't. And now, they are known by a different name. Most void-faring races have at least one cautionary tale of foolish explorers vanishing amidst its blazing stellar nurseries and strange anomalies. Yet for the Leagues of Votann, the galactic core has been home now for millennia. These squat humanoids would begin to establish themselves in the core, and their goals would be the same as their ancestors. Rock and stone! But actually kinda, yeah. Whenever one of them would die, they would know that that sucker would need to be uploaded to the machines like their forefathers did. But the original purpose of these machines was lost to time. What was once a technical resource for them turned into a ritual known as joining the ancestors. And the fact that they were clones at this point meant that the same copy of the same individual would be uploaded countlessly. The sheer overuse of these computers and the repeated uploading of redundant data has turned these once powerful supercomputers into your parents' computer after you installed LimeWire on it, and whose 50 Google Chrome tabs definitely contain information they will return to.
Okay, shut up. I feel called out. That's literally my Google Chrome tabs right now. If I were to click out of this video, look at this. Okay, shut up, shut up, shut up.
One day. So much corruption that these computers began to develop the makings of a personality of their own. These would be known as the Votann, and the kin, this dwarf-like abhuman of humanity would revere them. The Votann still operate to this day, but the volume of corruption have made anything outside of their very basic functions highly unpredictable. They may not answer a question for centuries at a time, and if they do provide an answer or data, it has become so corrupted and so incongruent that it takes a literal kin wizard to comprehend it. The kin, much like the dwarves of fantasy, exist nowadays as a mercantile species that constantly work to mine and manufacture. However, their capitalistic desires are dangerous. The biggest crimes a kin can face are being lazy, unproductive, and breaking a contract. Stellar conflicts have broken out over hundreds of years due to the breaking of a deal. So if you signed a contract with a kin, you best stick to it. Because of this, the kin have been known to interact with other species in a fairly common manner. This includes humanity, who have met various members of the kin multiple times but constantly considered them to be all a different species. Famously, the Imperium noted that the kin they referred to as the Squats were their own species and were wiped out by the Tyranids. Little did they know, they were still around. The kin are acutely aware of two things. The first is that the humans of the Imperium are deeply terrified of technology, so the sheer existence of the Votann is a secret as well as the truth. This extends also to the Iron Kin, sentient robots that are treated in the same esteem of flesh and blood kin because kin is kin. The second thing they are aware of is where they're from. They are fairly confident that they are from Terra, and they know that if this secret was to be known by the Imperium, that the Imperium might want to take ownership of them and everything they've built.
Yeah.
So the more alien they are, the better. Now,
sounds
this
about right.
Fine and good, right? What could possibly be wrong with these guys besides the hyper late stage space capitalism?
Let me guess. Bloodthirsty, want to commit murder, something like that.
Well, we have to go back to their creation. The kin are an entirely clone-based race made from the computers that are exceptionally difficult to recreate. These machines, the Votann, are becoming more and more unpredictable and derelict. If anything were to happen to these machines, it would be a twofold ending of the kin. New kin cannot be reproduced, reducing their numbers, and the existing kin would have no further purpose because the end that awaits them would be non-existent. The horror of the kin civilization is that the entire purpose of their lives is to do the best they can at their duty and upload all they know to the Votann, their ancestor cores, join their ancestors. But doing so is actually the thing that is killing these supercomputers in the first place. The ancestors were dead, but through the first truths, their legacy continued. And though their eyes had shut long ago, indeed the ancestors were watching, not with a gaze from eons gone, but with the eyes of every living kin. Each generation was the embodiment of the ancestors cast anew by the Votann. The galaxy changed. Stars died, planets were destroyed, and civilizations fell. But as long as the Votann endured, the ancestors still lived. I do want to end this last bit with an enjoyable quote from one Kim. As you may have assumed, the Leagues of Votann are space dwarves with a corporate sci-fi motif, but they are still very much dwarves. They're squat, they're strong as hell, and they hold serious grudges. This time it's just more about your contracts than anything else. And so because of this, they might treat most things about how you would expect a capitalistic dwarf would treat things. You misunderstand, human. I am not here to debate. I am not here to compromise. What you see as yours, I am taking for my kindred. You want to bargain? Torek, unholster our means of negotiation.
Guns.
As the Great Crusade continued, humanity would find their missing Primarchs, reestablish the locations of all of their various worlds, and finally reclaim what the Emperor was always hoping for. But eventually, all the Emperor sought to build would be his undoing. His original attempt to have all of the Primarchs lead his great armies and usher humanity into the better ages would end up crumbling down. And we will learn about how the Imperium backslides and the horror of the modern day of 40k in part 2.
Let's
I will see
go.
you very soon.
Let's
Thank you so much for
go.
watching.
That was an awesome video. What I find very interesting about Warhammer is all the super dystopian things that are happening. I will say that I overall still find the story of the Eldar a little bit more interesting than the humans, but I'm also curious to see what else there is.